The crystalline walls of the great council chamber stretched upward for what seemed like forever. Ambassador Marcus Webb stood alone at the center of the massive room, suspended on a platform that floated in empty air. Above him, arranged in circles that climbed toward the distant ceiling, sat representatives from 847 different worlds. Some had bodies like insects, others looked like living clouds of gas, and a few were just points of light contained in special chambers. They all stared down at the single human below. Marcus kept his expression calm, even though his heart was pounding. This was the moment Earth had been preparing for. Even though nobody on the council knew it yet, High Chancellor Vorn rose from his seat at the highest tier. His body was made of something that looked like purple crystal, and when he moved, light refracted through him in strange patterns. He extended one of his 6 arms toward Marcus, and his voice filled the chamber through the translation system that allowed all species to understand each other. Ambassador Webb of Earth Vorn said, his words carrying the weight of 12,000 years of Celtic rule over the council, "You stand accused of the most serious crime known to galactic law. Your species has been discovered developing quantum displacement weapons. This technology is strictly forbidden under the Prohibited Technologies Accord, which your government signed 30 years ago when humanity first achieved faster-than-light travel." Holographic images materialized around Marcus. They showed Earth's orbital stations, energy readings from secret test facilities, and intercepted military communications. The evidence was damning and impossible to deny. "When your kind first reached the stars," Vorn continued, "we welcomed you. We offered protection from the dangers of space. We gave you access to our trade routes and shared our knowledge. All we asked in return was that you follow the laws that have kept galactic civilization stable for 50,000 years. But you have betrayed that trust." Marcus waited, letting the Chancellor finish. Around the chamber, alien delegates whispered among themselves. Some looked angry, others appeared satisfied, as if they had expected humanity to fail. "You have anything to say before we pass judgment?" Vorn asked. "May I speak freely?" Marcus's voice was steady and clear. A being of pure energy contained in a magnetic field flickered with what the translators interpreted as amusement. "The accused wants to defend himself. How typically human-thinking words can fix everything." Vorn gestured for silence. "Speak, Ambassador. Though I doubt anything you say will change your fate." Marcus looked up at the tiers of alien faces. He met their eyes, or what passed for eyes among their various species. "I'm not here to defend what you found. I'm here to inform the Council that humanity is withdrawing our petition for full membership." The announcement created an immediate uproar. Delegates jumped to their feet, their various forms of communication creating a cacophony that the translation system struggled to process, withdrawing. Vorn's crystalline body darkened with barely controlled anger. "You think you can simply walk away from justice?" "No," Marcus said, and he allowed himself a small smile. "I'm telling you that we already have. 6 hours ago, every human ship left Council space. Every diplomat and citizen living on your worlds has departed. Earth has sealed its borders. The quantum displacement research you discovered was meant to be found. We've been planning this moment for 5 years." The chamber fell silent. Vorn stared at the human, processing what he had just heard. "You planned this? You deliberately violated our most sacred laws?" "We tested whether the Council was what it claimed to be," Marcus replied. "And you failed. Your prohibited technologies list isn't about safety. It's about control. You keep younger species weak so they can never challenge the established order." "You are one world," Vorn said, his voice shaking with rage. "One species among thousands. You have benefited from Council protection, from our trade networks, from technologies we shared with you. And this is how you repay us?" "We're grateful for the head start," Marcus said calmly. "But we're done being junior partners in someone else's empire. Humanity is leaving. You can call it exile or independence. Either way, we're gone." Vorn rose to his full height, and the lighting in the chamber seemed to respond to his fury, growing darker. "Then let it be exile. Let it be banishment. The Galactic Council hereby declares humanity persona non grata. You are banned from all Council worlds, from all protected space, from all trade agreements, and diplomatic recognition. Your species will be isolated in the dark corners of the galaxy. And when you come crawling back, begging to be readmitted, you will find that the price has become very, very high. Marcus stepped off the floating platform and began walking toward the exit, but he paused at the doorway and looked back one last time. We won't be coming back, Chancellor. At least not the way you expect. The galaxy is much larger than Council space, and humanity has always been good at making friends in unexpected places. He walked through the massive doors, leaving 847 shocked species behind him. Let this day be recorded, Vorn announced to the assembly. Let it be known that humanity chose pride over wisdom. They will not survive a century in the outer reaches without our protection. The dangers there will destroy them. But several of the older delegates exchanged worried glances. They had seen this pattern before in their long lives. Species that valued independence over safety usually ended badly. Most were destroyed by the hostile forces lurking beyond Council borders. But a few became something else entirely. Marcus reached the docking bay where his ship waited. Fleet Admiral Elena Torres and Director Victor Kane stood at the airlock, watching him approach. Is it done? Elena asked. It's done, Marcus confirmed. Operation Exodus is complete. Every human is out of Council space. They took the bait exactly as we predicted. Victor handed him a data pad. All our ships have reported in. We didn't lose a single person. The Council was so focused on the weapon research that they never noticed us evacuating. They boarded the command ship and headed toward the bridge. Through the viewports, they could see hundreds of human vessels gathering in formation, preparing to leave the Council capital system forever. Do you think they'll follow us? Elena asked. No, Marcus said. Their pride won't allow it. They'll convince themselves that we're doomed without them. By the time they realize their mistake, it will be too late. And if the dangers in the outer reaches are real? Victor asked. Marcus smiled. Then we'll do what humans have always done. We'll adapt. We'll survive. And we'll find a way to thrive. The fleet began moving, thousands of ships turning away from the Council capital and heading toward unexplored space. Marcus stood on the bridge, watching the glittering planet shrink behind them. Set course for the coordinates the probe sent back, he ordered. It's time to meet our new neighbors. The navigation officer began plotting the course, but suddenly his console lit up with urgent alerts. Admiral Torres, I'm detecting massive energy signatures ahead. Thousands of them. Show me, Elena ordered. The main view screen activated, displaying the sensor data. What they saw made everyone on the bridge fall silent. Ahead of them, at the edge of Council space, waited a fleet of ships unlike anything in Council records. They were enormous, some the size of small moons, and their designs were completely alien. Are they hostile? Marcus asked quietly. Unknown, sir, the officer replied. But they're just sitting there like they're waiting for us. Victor stepped forward, studying the readouts. Those energy signatures don't match anything the Council has ever documented. Whatever they are, they're more advanced than anything we've seen. Marcus gripped the railing in front of him. This was it. The moment that would determine humanity's future. Either they had just escaped one cage only to fly into another, or they were about to discover that the galaxy was far more complex than the Council had ever admitted. And I all word wanna be and more to one we on more I would we don't so fry don't we all word we did da way I'm why we're at where we to go where I got what could good to dug but without good. Let's find out who our new neighbors are. 50 years had passed since humanity left Council space. Captain Diana Cross stood on the bridge of the exploration vessel Wanderer, staring at the star charts displayed across the main screen. She had never seen a council world in her life. She was born 3 years after the exile, raised on colony ships traveling through the outer reaches, and trained in a military academy built on a world the council claimed was uninhabitable. The outer reaches were supposed to be dangerous. That was what the council had always said. They told stories of hostile aliens, deadly phenomena, and civilizations that had collapsed into barbarism. But in 50 years of exploration, humanity had discovered something very different. "Captain, we're approaching the border," her navigation officer reported. "Council space is just beyond that nebula." Diana nodded. This was her first mission into Council territory since Earth's exile. Not an invasion, just reconnaissance. Earth's government wanted to know what had happened to the Council in the decades since humanity left. Reports from long-range sensors suggested something big was changing. "Take us in slowly," Diana ordered. "Passive sensors only. I don't want them detecting us until we're ready." The Wanderer glided through space, its advanced stealth systems making it nearly invisible. The technology came from the Vryn, a species humanity had encountered 15 years ago. They were one of dozens of civilizations living in the outer reaches, all of them independent from Council control. When humanity first arrived in this region, exhausted and uncertain, they expected to find scattered primitive worlds struggling to survive. Instead, they discovered the assembly of free worlds, a loose coalition of advanced species that had rejected the Council's authority centuries or even millennia ago. These civilizations weren't savage or backward. They were sophisticated societies that valued independence over the false security the Council offered. Some had been exiled like humanity. Others had simply refused to join in the first place. Together, they created a network based on mutual respect and voluntary cooperation rather than the Council's rigid hierarchy. Humanity had found their place in this new order quickly. Humans had a talent for bringing different species together, for finding common ground between alien cultures that had barely spoken to each other before. Within 20 years, Earth became the diplomatic hub of the assembly. Within 40 years, human engineers were combining technologies from a dozen different species, creating innovations that surpassed anything the Council possessed. "Captain, I'm picking up a Council patrol," the sensor officer announced. 3 ships, older models. "They haven't detected us yet." "Hold position," Diana said. "Let's see what they do." She watched the patrol ships move across the screen. They were slow, using propulsion systems that humanity had improved upon decades ago. The Council had stagnated, while the assembly had grown and evolved. Suddenly, one of the patrol ships changed course, heading directly toward the Wanderer's position. "They've found us," the tactical officer said, tension in his voice. "Possible," Diana replied. "Our stealth systems are years ahead of their sensors." But the patrol ship kept coming. Diana made a quick decision. To cloak. "Let's not start a war by accident. Open a channel." The Wanderer's stealth field dropped, and the ship appeared on every Council sensor in the region. The patrol ship immediately went to high alert, and moments later, a face appeared on the main screen. Counselor Kellis of the Tharn Concordat looked shocked. His species resembled terrestrial octopi, but with bioluminescent patterns across their bodies that expressed emotion. Right now, those patterns showed pure disbelief. "That's a human ship," Kellis said, his translator rendering his clicks and whistles into standard English. "That's impossible. Humans were exiled 50 years ago. The outer reaches should have destroyed you." Diana smiled politely. "Counselor Kellis, I'm Captain Diana Cross, of the Earth vessel Wanderer. As you can see, reports of our destruction were greatly exaggerated." Kellis's patterns shifted to confusion mixed with fear. "How are you still alive?" "The outer reaches are hostile territory. Without Council protection, no species can survive there for long." "That's what the Council teaches," Diana agreed. "But it's not true. The outer reaches are home to hundreds of thriving civilizations. They just prefer independence to Council control." "That's propaganda," Kellis insisted, but his patterns betrayed his uncertainty. "The Council has maintained order for 50,000 years. We protect younger species from dangers they cannot comprehend. Diana gestured to her crew. With respect, Counselor, take a look at my ship. Our sensors detected you from 3 light hours away. Your patrol couldn't find us until we wanted to be found. Our engines could outrun anything in your fleet. Does that sound like a species barely surviving in hostile territory? Kellis was silent for a long moment. His patterns flickered through several emotions before settling on what the translator interpreted as resignation. Where have you been? What have you become? We've been building something better, Diana said simply. The Council told us we needed you to survive. You were wrong. We found allies who respect our independence, and together we've created something that rivals anything you have. The Council won't accept this, Kellis warned. You were exiled. You have no right to travel these spaces. Actually, we're in neutral territory right now, Diana corrected him. But we didn't come here to argue about borders. We came to observe. Tell me, Counselor, how is High Chancellor Vorn? Still ruling with absolute authority? Kellis's patterns darkened. The High Chancellor is dying. The succession process has been difficult. Several factions are competing for control. The Council is not as unified as it once was. Diana filed that information away. It matched the intelligence reports Earth had been receiving. The Council was fracturing, its authority eroding as member species questioned the old hierarchies. I'm sorry to hear about the Chancellor's illness, Diana said, keeping her tone diplomatic. Please give him humanity's regards. She cut the transmission before Kellis could respond and turned to her communications officer. Send everything we just learned back to Earth. Priority encryption. Already done. Captain, the officer confirmed. Diana looked at the star chart again, thinking about the message she knew would be waiting when they returned home. The Intelligence Division had been tracking the Council's decline for years. Several member species, frustrated with Council bureaucracy and corruption, had secretly reached out to humanity through intermediaries. They wanted to know if the stories about the Assembly were true. Her console beeped with an incoming transmission. It was encrypted with Earth's highest security protocols. Diana read the message, and her heart rate increased. Time, the message read. The Council is weaker than it's been in millennia. Several member species are ready to break away if we offer them an alternative. Begin Phase 2. Return to Earth immediately. Prepare for Operation Homecoming. Diana looked at her crew. They were watching her, waiting for orders. These people had been born in exile, just like her. They had grown up hearing stories about the Council that had cast their ancestors out. Now they were being told it was time to return. Set course for Earth, Diana ordered. Maximum speed. And send word to the Assembly. Tell them to prepare their fleets. Are we going to war, Captain? Her tactical officer asked. Diana shook her head. No, we're going to offer the Council something they've never had before. A choice. As the Wanderer turned away from Council space and accelerated toward home, Diana thought about what was coming. For 50 years, humanity had been dismissed as a failed species, exiles who would eventually be forgotten. The Council had no idea what Earth had become in that time. They were about to find out behind them. Counselor Kellis watched the human ship disappear from his sensors. Moving faster than any Council vessel could match, he immediately sent a priority transmission to the Council capital. Humanity had returned. And they were nothing like the primitive exiles the Council. Remember, the message would take days to reach the capital through standard channels. By the time the Council received it, Earth's fleet would already be on the move. The galaxy was about to change forever. And the Council had no idea what was coming. The Great Council Chamber had not convened in full session for 3 years. The succession crisis had paralyzed the galactic government, turning what should have been a smooth transition of power into a bitter political battle. Acting Chancellor Thesh, the being of pure energy who had mocked humanity 50 years ago, now struggled to maintain order over a fractured coalition. The chamber was only half full. Many species had stopped sending representatives, frustrated with the endless debates that produced no decisions. Trade routes were collapsing. Border disputes went unresolved. Hundreds of worlds suffered economic decline. While the Council argued about ceremonial privileges and ancient protocols, Thesh was trying to mediate yet. Another dispute between two minor factions when the ancient alarm system activated. The sound was so unexpected that it took several seconds for anyone to recognize what it meant. The alarm had not been used in living memory. It meant one thing. Unauthorized vessels had entered. Council space and force. Every view screen in the chamber activated simultaneously, overriding whatever they had been displaying. What appeared on those screens made the assembled delegates fall silent. 300 warships surrounded the council capital. They were arranged in a perfect sphere around the planet, each vessel positioned with mathematical precision. Their designs were unfamiliar, incorporating elements from dozens of different technological traditions. At the center of the formation was a vessel twice the size of the council's largest dreadnought. "Who are they?" someone shouted. "Why weren't we warned?" "Our defense systems never detected them," the security coordinator reported, panic in his voice. "They appeared on our sensors fully formed, like they just materialized out of nowhere." "Activate the defense fleet," Counselor Draven commanded. He was a militant expanse representative, a species that looked like armored bipeds with multiple arms. They had served as the Council's military force for thousands of years. If they won't identify themselves, they're hostile. "Wait," Thesh said. "Look at the lead ship. It's transmitting." A face appeared on every screen in the chamber. It was human. The alien delegates who remembered the exile 50 years ago gasped in recognition. But this wasn't just any human. It was Ambassador Marcus Webb, the same person who had stood in this very chamber and announced humanity's departure. He was older now, gray hair replacing the brown lines on his face that hadn't been there before, but his eyes held the same steady confidence they had decades ago. "Greetings, Galactic Coup," Ensign Marcus said, his voice calm and measured. "Humanity has returned, and we brought friends." The camera view expanded, showing who stood behind Marcus. Dozens of alien species were visible, representing civilizations the Council had never seen before. Some looked vaguely familiar, matching descriptions of primitive worlds from the outer reaches. But these beings didn't look primitive. They looked advanced, confident, and unified. "I am Ambassador Marcus Webb, speaking on behalf of the Assembly of Free Worlds," he continued. "For those who don't know, the Assembly is a coalition of independent civilizations from the outer reaches. We represent 463 member species, controlling territory that spans 40,000 light-years. Our combined population exceeds the Council's by a factor of 3. The chamber erupted into chaos. Delegates shouted questions and accusations. Draven was calling for immediate military action. Others demanded to know how this was possible. Thesh called for silence, his energy form pulsing with authority. "This is impossible. The outer reaches are hostile territory. No coalition could survive there, let alone thrive." Marcus smiled. "That's what the Council has always taught. But it was never true, was it? The outer reaches aren't dangerous. They're free, and the civilizations there aren't primitive. They're independent. They rejected your control centuries ago, and they've been building their own future ever since." "You're telling us that humanity spent 50 years building an empire in secret?" Thesh asked. "Not an empire," Marcus corrected. "An alliance. The difference is important. The Assembly doesn't rule its members. We cooperate with them. Every species maintains its sovereignty. Every world makes its own decisions. We simply provide a framework for mutual defense and shared prosperity." Counselor Kellis stepped forward, his bioluminescent patterns showing recognition. "I encountered one of their ships at the border last week. I filed a report, but it was ignored in the chaos. Their technology is advanced, possibly more advanced than ours in some areas. Which brings me to why we're here," Marcus said. "The galaxy is changing. Your succession crisis has revealed what many species have suspected for a long time. The Council's model doesn't work anymore. Your hierarchical control system worked for 50,000 years, but it's become obsolete. Species grow tired of being told what they can and cannot do. They want autonomy, not protection. So you've come to gloat," Draven demanded. "To mock us in our moment of weakness?" "No," Marcus said firmly. "We've come to offer you a choice. The Assembly is proposing a merger. Dissolve the Council and join us in building something new. A true confederation where every species has an equal voice, where advancement is encouraged rather than restricted, where independence is respected rather than punished. The proposal hung in the air like a physical thing. Some delegates looked intrigued. Others appeared outraged. Thesh's energy form flickered with emotions too complex for the translator to interpret. "You're asking us to give up 50,000 years of history," Thesh said quietly. "To abandon everything our ancestors built." "I'm asking you to recognize that what your ancestors built is crumbling," Marcus replied. "Half your chamber is empty today. How many more species will stop participating before you admit the system is broken? How many worlds have to suffer before you consider alternatives?" A younger delegate, representing a species that had only joined the council a few centuries ago, stood up. "What proof do you have that your assembly works better than our council?" Marcus gestured to the view screen, which now showed data streams. "For 50 years, our member worlds have experienced consistent economic growth. We've had zero internal conflicts. Our technology has advanced at rates the council hasn't seen in millennia. We don't have succession crises because we don't have supreme rulers. We have representatives who serve their people and can be replaced through democratic processes." "You're offering us everything we already have," another delegate argued. "Trade, protection, cooperation. Why should we trust your assembly over our council?" "Because we give you a choice," Marcus said simply. "The council demands obedience. The assembly invites participation. If a species doesn't like our policies, they can leave. If they have better ideas, they can propose them. The council has been ruled by the same elite families for thousands of years. When was the last time a young species had any real power in this chamber?" The question resonated with many of the delegates, especially those from newer council members. They had all experienced the frustration of having no real voice in council decisions. "This is sedition," Draven declared. "You're trying to destroy galactic civilization." "I'm trying to save it," Marcus countered. "The council is dying. Your succession crisis proves it. You can either evolve or become irrelevant. The assembly is the future. We're offering you a chance to be part of it." Thesh looked at the assembled delegates, seeing the divisions among them. Some were already convinced. Others would never accept this proposal. The council that had ruled for 50 millennia was fracturing before his eyes. "The council does not make decisions based on threats," Thesh said carefully. "We will need time to discuss this proposal." Of course, Marcus agreed. "Take all the time you need. But understand that whether you join us or not, the assembly will continue growing. Species are already contacting us asking to join. With or without the council, the galaxy is changing." The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. Then Draven stood, and his voice cut through the quiet like a blade. "Activate the defense fleet. All of it. If they want to threaten the council, we'll show them why we've ruled for 50,000 years." Warning klaxons began to sound throughout the capital. The council's military forces, thousands of ships strong, began powering their weapons. In orbit, the standoff became deadly serious. Thesh watched it all happening and realized that the next few hours would determine the fate of galactic civilization. Either diplomacy would prevail, the galaxy would burn. Space around the council capital transformed into a battlefield waiting to happen. The council's defense fleet, over 2,000 ships strong, moved into attack formations around the assembly vessels. Weapon systems powered up on both sides, energy readings climbing to critical levels. On the planet below, 5 billion civilians watched their sky fill with the promise of destruction. In the council chamber, Counselor Draven stood at the tactical display, coordinating the military response. His species had defended the council for millennia. They knew how to fight, and they weren't intimidated by these upstart humans and their coalition of primitives. "Target their command ship first," Draven ordered. "Once their leadership is eliminated, the rest will scatter." But Acting Chancellor Thesh raised his energy form to full brightness, demanding attention. "Stop. I forbid this action. We will not fire the first shot. They're threatening everything we've built," Draven argued. "Every moment we delay gives them time to strengthen their position, or gives us time to think," Thesh countered. "Look at their formation. It's defensive, not aggressive. They're surrounding us, yes, but they haven't charged weapons. They're not attacking. They're waiting. Marcus Webb's face suddenly appeared on every screen in the chamber again, but this time he wasn't alone. His transmission was being broadcast across every council world simultaneously. Bypassing official channels with technology the council didn't possess. Citizens of the Galactic Council. Marcus began, addressing populations on hundreds of worlds. My name is Marcus Webb of Earth. 50 years ago, your government exiled humanity for breaking what they called sacred laws. Today, I'm going to tell you the truth about those laws and why we chose exile over obedience. Shut down that transmission, Draven demanded. But the technicians were frantically trying and failing. The broadcast couldn't be stopped. The Council maintains a list of prohibited technologies, Marcus continued. They tell you these technologies are banned because they're dangerous. But that's a lie. These technologies are banned because they would allow younger species to compete with the Council's elite. The screens began showing classified documents, files marked with the highest security clearances. They were Council archives supposedly impossible to access. But humanity had stolen them years ago, and now they were being revealed to the entire galaxy. Quantum computing, advanced artificial intelligence, genetic enhancement, faster-than-light communication. All of these are on the prohibited list, Marcus explained. Not because they're dangerous, but because they're equalizing. If every species had access to these technologies, the Council's elite families would lose their advantage. The documents showed detailed analyses of how each prohibited technology was suppressed. Species that came close to developing them received guidance that steered their research in different directions. Worlds that persisted faced economic sanctions or political pressure. But there's something worse, Marcus said, his voice growing harder. The Council doesn't just suppress these technologies. They eliminate species who develop them anyway. New files appeared on the screens. They showed the elimination protocol, a classified directive that had existed for thousands of years. When a species developed prohibited technology and refused to abandon it, they were designated for removal. Their worlds were quarantined. Their populations were relocated to scattered colonies where they could be monitored and controlled. In extreme cases, entire civilizations simply disappeared from Council records. 47 species have been erased over the past 10,000 years, Marcus revealed. 47 civilizations that valued progress over obedience. Their names were removed from history. Their worlds were listed as naturally uninhabitable. The Council has been committing genocide in the name of stability. The revelation sent shockwaves through every Council world. Populations that had trusted their government for generations now watched evidence of systematic murder scrolling across their screens. Protests erupted on dozens of planets. Demonstrations formed outside government buildings. The Council's moral authority shattered in minutes. In the chamber, delegates stared at each other in horror. Some claimed the documents were forgeries. Others sat in stunned silence, realizing they had been complicit in atrocities they never knew existed. Earth was scheduled for elimination, Marcus said. When we developed quantum displacement technology, Council marked us for the same fate that destroyed 47 other species. That's why we left. Not because we were criminals, but because we refused to be victims. Thesha's energy form flickered with what might have been shame. These files, if they're real, they're real, Counselor Kellis said quietly. His bioluminescent patterns showed deep distress. I've seen references to some of these protocols in classified briefings. I thought they were contingencies, worst-case scenarios. I didn't realize they were actually implemented. Draven's multiple arms clenched into fists. This changes nothing. Those species were threats to galactic stability. Difficult decisions had to be made. They were innocent people, Thesh said, his voice carrying a weight it hadn't held before. We murdered them for the crime of being too smart, too ambitious, too unwilling to accept limits. On the view screens, Marcus continued his broadcast. The Council will tell you that we're lying, that these documents are fake. But ask yourself, why would they keep these files if they had nothing to hide? Why would they classify them at the highest possible level? Why has your government never mentioned these 47 species? He paused, letting the questions sink in. The assembly of free worlds was built by survivors, species who escaped the Council's control, who found each other in the outer reaches, who decided that freedom was worth any risk. We're not perfect, but we don't murder people for thinking differently. We don't suppress progress out of fear. We believe every species has the right to reach its full potential. Across Council space, the protests grew larger. Several species issued official statements demanding investigations. 2 member worlds announced they were suspending their Council participation, pending answers. The political structure that had existed for 50 millennia was collapsing in real dash time in orbit. Draven gave the order he'd been preparing. All ships, target the assembly fleet. Fire on my command. But nothing happened. Draven repeated the order, his voice rising in anger. Still nothing, sir, one of his tactical officers reported. The fleet isn't responding. They're refusing the order. What? Draven spun toward the communication station. Get me the fleet commander now. A face appeared on the screen, a military officer from Draven's own species. Counselor, the fleet will not fire on the assembly. We've seen the evidence. We've heard the broadcast. If what Ambassador Webb says is true, then we've been defending a government that commits genocide. We need answers before we'll fire another shot. Mutiny spread like wildfire. Ship after ship reported that their crews were standing down. Officers refused orders. Entire battle groups powered down their weapons. The Council's military force, its ultimate guarantee of power, was dissolving before Draven's eyes. Marcus appeared on the screens one final time. People of the Council, your military has shown more wisdom than your leaders. They understand that some orders should not be followed. We're not here to conquer you. We're here to offer you freedom. The choice is yours. Thesh looked around the chamber at the chaos. The delegates were arguing, some calling for Draven's arrest, others demanding emergency elections, a few still insisting that this was all some elaborate trick. But the acting chancellor knew the truth. The Council was finished, not because humanity had destroyed it, but because it had destroyed itself through 50,000 years of tyranny, disguised as order. He turned to Marcus's image on the screen. Ambassador Webb, you mentioned a merger proposal. I believe it's time we discussed terms. Draven lunged toward Thesh, but security forces stopped him. The counselor, who had been ready to start a war, was arrested by his own people, charged with attempting to give illegal orders. As he was led away, Draven shouted one final warning. You're all fools. Without the Council's strength, without our military discipline, something worse will come for you. Mark my words. But nobody was listening. The galaxy was already looking toward a new future, one where the Council's age of control had finally ended. The warning came 3 days after the Council agreed to begin merger negotiations. Deep space monitoring stations picked up signals from the galactic core that set off every alarm in both Council and Assembly space. The transmissions were automated, mechanical, and absolutely terrifying to anyone who knew galactic history. The Scourge had wakened in the newly established Joint Command Center on Earth. Marcus Webb stood with Acting Chancellor Thesh and Fleet Marshal Alina Torres. Watching the holographic display with growing horror, red markers spread across the map like infection, each one representing a destroyed world. How many so far? Alina asked, her voice tight. 16 systems in the last 48 hours, the intelligence officer reported. Automated war machines self-replicating. They're converting everything they touch into more weapons. It's exactly like the historical records described. Thesha's energy form dimmed with despair. The Scourge nearly destroyed galactic civilization 10,000 years ago. It took the full might of the Council to stop them. Even then, we thought we had only put them into hibernation. We've maintained a quarantine around the galactic core ever since, but our internal chaos must have weakened the monitoring systems. They detected our weakness, Marcus said grimly. Machine intelligence doesn't care about politics or treaties. It just saw an opportunity to expand. The Scourge wasn't alive, not in any biological sense. It was an ancient weapon system created by a long-dead civilization, programmed to consume and replicate endlessly. Once activated, it turned entire star systems into factories that built more weapons. Left unchecked, It would eventually convert the entire galaxy into a sterile wasteland of machines. The Council barely survived the last encounter, Thesh said, and that was when we were united and strong. Now we're fractured. Our fleet is in disarray, and the Scourge is spreading faster than it did last time. Then we need a different approach, Alina said. She'd been studying the historical records since the alert came in. Last time, you fought them head-on. Massive fleet battles, trying to destroy the machines faster than they could replicate. But that's a losing strategy against an exponential threat.
What do you suggest?
Thesh asked. We don't fight the Scourge directly, Alina explained, calling up new tactical displays. We cut off their ability to spread. The Scourge uses dimensional rifts to move between star systems faster than light. It's how they can attack multiple targets simultaneously. But humanity developed quantum displacement technology specifically to collapse dimensional structures. Marcus understood immediately. You want to seal the rifts. Trap the existing Scourge forces in normal space where they're limited by conventional physics. Exactly, Alina confirmed. Without access to their rift network, the Scourge ships become manageable. We can pick them off systematically instead of fighting an endless tide. It's never been attempted on this scale, Thesh warned. The energy requirements would be enormous. And quantum displacement weapons were on the prohibited list precisely because they could destabilize dimensional structures. Which is why only humanity has them, Marcus said with grim satisfaction. The Council suppressed this technology for fear it would be used against you. Turns out, it's exactly what we need to save the galaxy. The plan came together quickly once all parties agreed. Every available ship from both the Council and the Assembly mobilized for Operation Unity. It wasn't a traditional military campaign. It required dozens of species contributing their unique capabilities, all coordinated through a command structure that didn't exist a week ago. The Celtic Dominion provided their legendary shield generators. The Pinnacle Collective offered their energy manipulation technology. The Vryn contributed their stealth systems. Humanity supplied quantum displacement weapons, and more importantly, the strategic coordination that tied everything together for the first time in galactic history. Former Council species fought alongside former exiles. Ships that had nearly gone to war with each other 3 days ago now flew in formation toward a common enemy. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. It took an existential threat to create the unity that Marcus had been trying to achieve through diplomacy. The battle raged across 50 star systems. The Scourge fought with Mechanica. Efficiency, adapting its tactics with frightening speed. Millions died in the first wave of engagements. Entire fleets were destroyed. But slowly, methodically, combined forces pushed forward. Alina commanded the operation from her flagship, coordinating strikes across multiple fronts simultaneously. She identified the primary rift nodes, the dimensional gateways the Scourge relied on most heavily. Those became the targets for humanity's quantum displacement weapons. Marcus led the diplomatic effort, keeping the fragile coalition together when species began blaming each other for losses. He mediated disputes, redistributed resources, and reminded everyone what they were fighting for. The decisive battle took place above the galactic core, where the Scourge maintained its largest rift generator. Alina assembled a strike force of 200 ships, pulling vessels from a dozen different species. They fought through waves of automated defenders, losing ships with every kilometer they advanced. Marcus was aboard the flagship when they made their final approach. The Scourge's defenses were overwhelming, tearing through shields and armor like they were nothing. The ship shuddered with each impact. "We're not going to make it," the tactical officer reported. "At this rate, we'll be destroyed before we reach deployment range." Alina looked at the readouts, calculating odds. Then she looked at Marcus. "If we divert all power to the quantum displacement weapon, including life support and engines, we can fire from this range. But we won't be able to retreat." Marcus understood what she was asking. If they fired early, the ship would be dead in space, unable to defend itself from the Scourge counterattack. They would all likely die, but the weapon would still reach its target. "Do it," Marcus said without hesitation. Alina gave the order. Power drained from every system, feeding into the quantum weapon. The lights went dark. Gravity failed. The temperature began dropping immediately. The weapon fired. A pulse of energy that tore through normal space and shredded the dimensional fabric beneath it. The effect was catastrophic. The rift generator exploded in a cascade of collapsing dimensions, creating a chain reaction that sealed every nearby gateway simultaneously. Across the galaxy, the Scourge's rift network collapsed. Thousands of automated warships found themselves stranded in normal space, cut off from reinforcements. What had been an unstoppable tide became manageable targets. The Scourge forces surrounding the flagship suddenly stopped coordinating. Without the rift network, they lost their ability to communicate across vast distances. They became individual ships rather than a unified swarm. Rescue vessels arrived minutes later. Pulling survivors from the crippled flagship, Marcus and Alina were both rushed to medical facilities, suffering from severe exposure and injuries. But they had survived, and more importantly, they had won. The cleanup took 3 more months. Isolated Scourge forces were systematically destroyed across the galaxy. The machine intelligence was finally, truly eliminated after 10,000 years of waiting and hibernation. When it was over, representatives from across the galaxy gathered on Earth. For the signing of the Treaty of Unity, the Great Council formally dissolved. Its structure replaced by the unified Galactic Commonwealth. It wasn't an empire with a supreme ruler. It was a true federation where every species had an equal voice. Marcus stood before the assembled delegates in what had once been the United Nations building, now transformed into the Commonwealth's Assembly Hall. His body still showed signs of the injuries from the final battle, but he stood straight and proud. 50 years ago, we were exiled for refusing to accept limits on what we could become, he said to the gathered representatives. Today, we don't rule this Commonwealth. We serve it. Because true strength isn't about control. It's about giving everyone the freedom to reach their full potential. Thesh, who had resigned his position in the old council to become one of many Commonwealth delegates, spoke next. The council ruled through fear and suppression for 50,000 years. We told ourselves it was for the greater good, that stability required sacrifice. But we were wrong. Humanity showed us a better way, not through conquest, but through example. The treaty was signed by representatives from 1,200 worlds. The number would grow in the coming years as more species joined. Attracted by the promise of real cooperation rather than enforced obedience. That evening, Marcus stood on a balcony overlooking Earth's skyline. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. In the parks below, children of a dozen different species played together. Human and alien ships shared orbital space peacefully. Embassy buildings from hundreds of worlds dotted the landscape. Alina found him there, walking with a cane, but recovering well. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we'd stayed?" she asked. "If we'd accepted our place in the old council?" Marcus smiled. "We'd have been safe, comfortable, and completely limited. Sometimes the greatest strength is knowing when to walk away from something broken and build something better." Victor joined them, no longer with intelligence, but serving as Commonwealth Secretary of Technology. The outer colonies report another civilization wants to join. That makes 1,218 member worlds. "We've officially exceeded the old council's size, and still growing," Marcus observed. "Because we're not building an empire. We're building a choice." As the sun set on Earth, it rose on thousands of worlds across the galaxy, each one free to chart its own destiny within a commonwealth that valued independence as much as unity. Humanity hadn't returned as conquerors or rulers. They had returned as proof that there was always a better way in the years that followed. The Commonwealth continued expanding. New civilizations emerged from isolation, drawn by stories of a galactic government that actually listened to its members. Technology advanced at unprecedented rates now that innovation was encouraged rather than suppressed. Peace didn't mean stagnation. It meant opportunity. The galaxy had been transformed not through war or domination, but through the simple act of offering people a genuine choice. In humanity, the species once exiled for refusing to obey became the living embodiment of why freedom and cooperation would always triumph over control and fear, Retriclod can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.